Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Two for Holding by Lasairiona Mcmaster, narrated by Esmé Monet and Christopher Anthony. Chapter 1. Sabrina. Since when did Target sell vibrators? It really was becoming a one-stop shop. After her second call of the day from her parents, Sabrina stood weighing up two adult toys like she was deciding whether to buy crunchy or smooth peanut butter. Since Crunchy PB was for heathens, however, committing to a battery-operated bed partner was proving to be more difficult. She was tempted to try the vibrating feather, but the vibrating arc looked like it would be more fun, so she grabbed the multicolored box and tossed it into the cart next to the pack of razor blades. Something special happened when you walked through the sliding doors of a Target store. It was as though you were transported to another world just by crossing the threshold. A world where everything you never knew you needed lay under one roof. To get to the magical world of all the things, you first had to pass by the gauntlet of a Starbucks counter, restrooms, and fresh, hot popcorn. Corporations knew you needed to empty your bladder before you embarked on an Olympic sport-level shopping trip. Get them in the door and don't let them leave. On the other hand, maybe the universe knew you needed to keep your hands occupied with chocolate frappuccinos and the most delicious snack known to humankind: salty, buttery popcorn. Walking around with both hands free, you'd end up selling your left kidney to pay for the $1,600 cart you'd inevitably end up with at the checkout. One hand on the handle of the cart, she steered around the not-quite-big-enough space, while the other hand cradled a venti, double chocolatey chip creme frappuccino. She was doing a service to her bank account and her left kidney. She was, after all, rather attached to it. At least that's what she told herself as she steered the cart around the sunglasses, sun hats, and purses section. She'd have to factor some kind of penance walk into her week for having such a ginormous indulgence. But for now, she sucked a stubborn chocolate chip out of the straw, coughing when it hit the back of her throat, and made her way into the clothing section. Her Target time was sacred, methodical, and even though she'd been around the aisles countless times before, she still walked each and every one, each and every time. Who knew what shiny new treasures they'd put out since the last time she'd visited? Sure, it was only 3 days ago, but a lot could change in 3 days. She reached out and traced her fingers along the shoulder of a gray sweater hanging at the front of a display. Why did clothes never look quite the same off the rack? You fell in insta-love with something hanging on a faceless mannequin, but when you tried it on in front of those judgy AF dressing room mirrors, it was all kinds of wrong. Not feeling a clothing spree vibe from today's trip to Valhalla, she set off to find snacks, a screeching noise grinding her to a halt. Unhooking the broken clothes hanger caught in the wheel of her cart, she pushed forward. By the time she got to the cereal aisle, Sabrina had a mismatch of items in her cart. She picked up a floppy hat to add to her growing collection and kid sunscreen, because despite her golden brown skin, she still burned to a crisp, even in the Minnesota winter sun. She had grabbed 3 pairs of socks, already unpairing them in her head, because she never wore a matching pair. The cereal aisle brought out her inner kid, always torn between what she wanted to eat and what she should eat. The lure of Cinnamon Toast Crunch was winning out as she scanned the shelves. A soft pop, followed by an unmistakable tinkling of spilling cereal onto the linoleum floor, made her spin to find the source of the noise. A little girl, no more than 3 years old, sat cross-legged with a bag of Lucky Charms on her lap. The box was cast aside, torn open, shards of colored cardboard strewn across the aisle. Cereal and marshmallow shapes littered her Princess Anna costume and surrounded her like a rainbow of brightly colored sugar. Her plastic crown had slipped off center and clung to her mop of dark ringlets. The aisle was otherwise empty. Where were her parents? "Hi!" Sabrina closed the 8-foot gap between them and crouched low. "Does your mommy know you're here?" The little girl's head canted and her eyebrows stitched together in a confused frown. She shoveled another handful of cereal into her already chewing mouth before offering a saliva-covered pile of reconstituting marshmallows to Sabrina. Giggling, she shook her head while untangling the little girl's crown and putting it right. "No, thank you, but we should probably find your parents. I'm pretty sure they're going to be worried about you." "Jude!" A dark-haired man sprinted toward them from the end of the aisle. He raked his hand through his stylish hair before scraping a palm across his stricken face. He bent over, hands on his knees before straightening and rubbing his chest. He crouched next to the little girl. "We've talked about you wandering off, baby girl." The little girl giggled, shoving a handful of cereal at her older brother's face. "Not funny, Juju." He re-straightened her crown. Sabrina's ovaries clenched. Unsure of how to extricate herself from the situation, she opted for the back away quietly and hope no one notices approach. It was all going so well until the traitorous toasted oat pieces crunched underfoot. The man's head jerked up as though he'd only just realized someone else was there, and he did a double take. So did she. Oh, God. She'd know those cornflower blue eyes and shirt-straining six-pack anywhere. Russell Stewart from her French class. Her stomach lurched, threatening to upheave the now-curdling frappuccino from its sloshing grasp. Embarrassment clawed at her chest, forcing her breaths to come in short, shallow pants. She'd done a stellar job of avoiding him since their unfortunate encounter in the men's restroom, when he'd rescued her with a wad of toilet paper from another stall earlier in the semester. She swallowed hard and wiped a clammy palm along her thigh. Maybe he didn't remember her. Maybe things like that happened to him all the time, and she wouldn't stand out among the droves of women who threw themselves at his deliciousness. She swallowed again. She forced her eyes back to the little princess. So he spent his Saturday mornings hanging out with Anna of Arundel. Interesting. It still didn't cover her embarrassment at having met him in the men's room, but it soothed her wound just a tad. "Say something. You're just staring at him. Speak." Russell?" Whose voice had come out of her mouth? And why did it sound so raspy? The worry and fear painted over his face as he'd run toward them dissipated, replaced by a mask of calm indifference. But his eyes, they weren't just indifferent. They were cold. As icy as Elsa's frickin' castle atop the North Mountain. Sabrina was hard on her sleeve fire. Every emotion that rippled through her, she wore like a badge of honor. She was passionate and outspoken, and as strikingly handsome as Russell Stewart was with his chiseled jaw and his pale blue eyes, she had no idea how to handle ice. She shivered. Despite being on the hockey team, Russell Stewart kept to himself. He was often missing from parties and group activities, shrouded in an air of mystery. Seeing him interacting with his little sister, the panic, fear, overtly raw emotion that had distorted his otherwise stoic face, squeezed her heart. "I'll just—" She pointed a thumb over her shoulder and turned to leave, hugging the box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch against her chest. Cereal crunched underfoot, but she didn't stop. She kept walking, pulse thundering in her ears. She liked to people watch. It didn't hurt when the people she watched looked as delectable as Russ did. They'd barely spoken 2 words to each other in their whole first year in class together, so he couldn't hate her, could he? "Let's get you cleaned up, princess." A smattering of Lucky Charms fell to the floor as Jude stood. The sound of a hand sweeping against fabric, for some reason, made Sabrina smile. Hey, I don't know your name, but you forgot your cart. Her cart, right. She could pretend it wasn't hers so she wouldn't have to look at his unfairly attractive face again. She could pretend she hadn't heard him. No, don't. Jude! Before she could act, a tiny hand slipped into her palm and tugged her arm. When Sabrina turned, the little girl pointed at her cart and yanked her toward it. Russell raised an eyebrow and gave a shrug. He stepped toward Jude, arms outstretched. Come here, pumpkin. Jude looked up at Sabrina, then back to Russell, before dropping Sabrina's hand and flinging herself at Russell's leg. It was the cutest thing she'd ever witnessed, but it seemed Russ had missed the glint of sheer joy and love in his little girl's eyes. His eyes were on her cart, or more accurately, on something in her cart. Wonder Woman socks, tampons. Surely he'd seen those before, unless he'd lived a sheltered life. What in her soon-to-be purchases was so exciting it was holding him wrapped? Her stomach coasted off the edge of a cliff and dropped in free fall. His eyes were pinned on the vibrator box. He tipped his head as though he was trying to either read the box or figure out where it went and how it worked. Beads of sweat broke out over every inch of Sabrina's body as Russ's curiosity morphed into something else right in front of her eyes. She didn't know him well enough to know what the look meant, but despite the Ice King radiating chilly fuck off and leave me alone vibes, something warm flickered in his gaze. She cleared her throat and his gaze flicked from the cart to her face. Strike that. Something hot. And if she didn't take her cart and leave, she'd need to strip off and jump into one of the freezers in the frozen section to survive. He jerked his chin at her basket, face deadpan. Have fun. Unable to look him in the eye, she grabbed the handle of the cart and fled. Russell Stewart had seen her buying a vibrator in Target, after seeing her in the men's room at school. It was official. She'd have to change schools, leave the state, and change her name. Maybe she'd move to Canada. More, Daddy! Sabrina stumbled over her feet, attempting to spin the cart in front of her for support so she didn't crash onto her face. Daddy? What? No. He couldn't be the little girl's father, right? How had she been in class with the man for over a year and not known he had a child? She pulled her top lip between her teeth. It wasn't that unusual. There was plenty she didn't know about people in her class. But a kid? She cast a furtive glance over her shoulder. Russ's forehead was leaning against Jude's. No more cereal, Bug. You won't eat your lunch. We need to go find someone to get me a broom so I can sweep up this mess of yours. Then we gotta get some groceries, grab you a birthday present. Then we gotta go see Mimi. The little girl's face lit up like Times Square at the mention of Mimi. Deal? The little girl nodded. Smiling to herself, Sabrina rounded the corner into the next aisle. This side of Russ was nothing short of adorable, but it left her with questions she had no business wondering about. Was Russ in a relationship? Who was the girl's mother? Didn't Russ room on campus with one of the other hockey players? Who had the little girl when he was at school? Her mom? Mimi? As she picked up her groceries, the question that kept coming up was whether or not Russ would give another thought to the fact he'd just busted her purchasing a vibrator. Turned out, Target's wonders had nothing on the mystery that was Russell Stewart.
Chapter 2. Russell. Russell's heart still raced as he swooped Jude up and attempted to coax her tiny, thrashing body back into the seat of their cart. Did kids somehow grow extra limbs when it came to things like dressing them, bathing them, and trying to cram their tiny frames into a cart? It sure as hell felt like it. No, 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 Daddy. He rubbed at the stubborn knot in his chest. How did parents cope with the burden of responsibility hanging over them for 18 years? Would it get easier? Or would his current fears simply morph into the next ones? His stomach clenched. Considering his experience of the first 2 years of her life, it was the latter. Running off in a Target superstore was one thing, but boyfriends? He needed to figure out a way to keep her young so he wouldn't have to give her future boyfriends a beatdown. "No, Daddy, no!" "Baby girl, I need you to sit in here, okay? This is what happens when you run off and give Daddy a heart attack." The little girl folded her arms and scowled. He kissed her cheek, and the duo set off to find a staff member to ask for a dustpan and brush to clean up the cereal carnage his 2-year-old terror had left behind. He turned into the next aisle, and there she was, again. Previously referred to in his brain as Sexy in the Stall, she would now be known as Vibrator Girl. As he approached the Target employee, he created a persona for the new and unsuspecting superhero standing staring blankly at the label of a can of soup. Nothing quite said superhero like the ability to hand out orgasms on command. He chuckled, covering it with a cough behind his hand when she turned and caught his gaze. "Excuse me." He approached the older lady stacking the shelves with a warm smile. "I'm sorry, but my daughter burst open a box of cereal in the next aisle." Jabbing a thumb over his shoulder toward the cereal, he gave an awkward laugh before cramming his hands in his pockets and rocking back on his heels. "I was wondering if you could get me something to clean it up with, please?" Her gaze flitted between the still scowling 2-year-old gripping the handle of the cart and Russell. The woman's pursed lips puckered as though she was fighting a smile, and mirth danced in her eyes. She gave a slow and somber nod. "Absolutely, but I'm sorry to say the person who caused the mess must be the one to tidy it up." Jude's eyebrows relaxed from their deep frown and shot up her forehead. Eyes wide, her jaw dropped open. He chuckled. "I'm sure Princess Anna wouldn't mind picking up after herself. Right, Pumpkin?" The little girl shook her head, and the Target employee smiled. "Don't sweat it. I'll take care of it." Russ waved a hand at her. "No, please. At least let me help clean up. I need to grab the empty box so I can pay for her, snack anyway." She lowered her voice. "It's all good. It can be our little secret. Right, Princess Anna?" She winked at Jude before tapping the side of her nose and leaving, humming "Do You Want to Build a Snowman" from the Disney movie Frozen. Raking a hand through his hair, he shook his head. "That won't always happen, little one. You should always be prepared to clean up your own messes." He tapped her on the nose. A snort sounded from Vibrator Girl, still holding the can of soup. "I'll say." She turned to him, eyes wide, and a hand clamped over her mouth. Fighting the smile making his lips twitch, he raised an eyebrow. Was she blushing? She was freaking adorable. "Oh, God, that wasn't supposed to be out loud." Instead of answering, he pushed the cart toward the end of the aisle. He needed to get out of her orbit before he did something stupid, like kiss those perfectly plump Cupid's bow-shaped lips. She was rounding the corner into the next aisle, so he skipped it, despite needing chips and dip. He didn't want to spend the rest of his shopping trip bumping into the woman who probably thought he was the world's worst father for having lost his 2-year-old daughter in the belly of Target, even for a millisecond. Shame crept along his skin, making his cheeks warm. Never again would he listen to the pleas of the tiny terrorist surveying her confinement as though trying to mastermind a prison break. Sitting secured in the cart was officially required target procedure, and she'd just have to deal with it. "Hi!" Her little arm shot out, hand waving back and forth. Expecting the merciful target employee who cleaned up after his wayward daughter, he turned. Nope, not his target angel after all. Vibrator Girl groaned before her visible disappointment at seeing him morphed into a shy smile. She curtsied to Jude. "Your Majesty?" Jude giggled. With an incline of her head and a perfectly cool, impassive face, she added, "Sir Warm and Fuzzy." This woman. Before he could react, her eyes narrowed at him, she turned, grabbed her cart, and left. Despite her radiant beauty, the woman's glary judgment was killing his shopping vibe. He'd love to hear her name just one parent who hadn't chased their kid through the aisle of a store. He'd come back at another time, when there was one less sassy, orgasmic superhero to sour his mood in every freaking aisle. "Come on, Miss Mischief. Let's blow this popsicle stand and go see Mimi." "Yay!" Jude's face lit up and she clapped. "Mimi! Mimi!" He stuttered to a stop almost as fast as he started moving. Shit. He at least needed to grab toilet paper. He grimaced. He'd assured his roommate and best friend Link that he wouldn't forget to grab it when he was out. Surely he'd be safe from Vibrator Girl in the toilet paper aisle. Gotta grab some TP first, baby girl. Can't have Uncle Link being big mad at Daddy and stranded on his porcelain throne now, can we? "Uncle Ink!" she clapped again. Russ managed to get in and out of the toilet paper aisle without a Vibrator Girl sighting. He grabbed a family-sized bag of Lay's, a jar of creamy spinach dip, a multi-pack of veggie straws, and a gallon of orange juice on his way to the self-checkout. In the parking lot, he sprinted toward the Chevy Impala his parents bought for him when he first found out he was going to be a father. Part of him always thought it was a guilt gift for the fact they got divorced during his SATs. But since he had a baby on the way, he couldn't let pride come between him and a safe ride for his kid. When the cart picked up speed, he lifted his feet off the ground, leaning over the handlebar. Jude shrieked with glee, throwing her head back, dark curls bobbing in the breeze. "Again!" Her demands started as soon as the cart stopped when they got to the trunk of his car. "Sorry, Juju. We can't spend the day causing cart chaos in the Target parking lot." "Hi!" She waved at someone to his left, and his stomach dropped as he turned to see Vibrator Girl loading bags into the trunk of the car 2 spaces down. She curtsied again, this time with a flourish of her arms, sending Jude into a new fit of laughter. But a frown tugged the woman's brows together when she looked at him. What was this woman's deal? Was she a helicopter mom who judged other parents by her own standards? Did she have the perfect angel at home waiting for her to return with her carrot sticks and organic hummus? Wasn't all hummus organic? First, she found his kid eating a bag of Lucky Charms alone in the cereal aisle. Then she saw him recklessly freewheeling his cart through the parking lot with his toddler on board. He mentally facepalmed. Would she somehow pop up when he didn't have her in bed by 7 p.m. on the dot, too? There wasn't a single tub of hummus to be found in her cart, organic or any other kind for that matter. Irritation forced a growl-adjacent noise from his chest as he tossed his purchases into the trunk. He was a damn good parent, and he wasn't letting a woman with a cart full of junk food and a permanent frown on her face judge his relationship with the most important woman in his life. "Uh-oh!" Jude smacked her palm against her head. He'd been so caught up in his internal monologue that he'd missed the dull clink of a tiara hitting the deck a few feet from where Vibrator Girl stood. "It's okay, Princess. I got it." VG stepped toward the fallen crown. Russell surged forward. "It's good. We're good. I got it." Jumping back as though he'd electrocuted her with his words, she mumbled something under her breath and turned back to her car. She paused, gave one final low curtsy at Jude, and wished her a pleasant day with her Prince Charming before bounding into her car and driving away. Unfortunately, his embarrassment didn't drive away with her. Why was he so bothered by her frowns and pursed lips? Why did he care what she thought of his parenting skills? It's not like they were even friends. Other than seeing her a few times in class since their encounter in the men's bathroom, their paths never crossed. What did her opinion of him matter? He couldn't answer as he strapped Jude into her rear-facing car seat and closed the door. What was it about the woman that was getting him so bent out of shape? His dick twitched in his pants. It knew the answer, but Russell wasn't prepared to listen to it. What the hell did he care what she thought about him anyway? And what did it have to do with his dick? Shit. Did he have a crush on Vibrator Girl? Something sharp jabbed his ribs and he bolted upright. Blinking in the dim space, he tried to remember who and where he was. The smell of sweet jasmine and mint, mixed with the musty smell of old books, assaulted his nasal passages. He rubbed his eyes before rolling his neck and groaning. Ugh. He'd obviously been asleep long enough for his neck to go stiff. He reached for his ribs. Someone had poked him, right? Movement to his left made him start. Was he dreaming? Or was Vibrator Girl crouched next to his table in the library? If he was dreaming, his subconscious was a cruel bastard. She looked glorious. Beams of early morning golden sunlight from the window high above the library bookshelves lit her up like an angel. Her black wavy hair hung in front of her face. It took everything he had not to reach out, tangle his fingers in it, and pull her in for a kiss. He reminded himself he didn't have time for distractions, even if they were beautiful, sassy women who spent their time glaring at him. Definitely not a dream. If it was a dream, she'd have a wide smile on her face and be gazing at him adoringly. She'd also likely be very, very naked. In reality, however, her brows pinched together and her chocolate, almost black eyes glinted with irritation. "He lives!" Her snarky hissed words were the only sounds in the all but deserted library. She waved before standing upright. "Actually, I knew that already. Want to know how I knew that already?" His brain fought to process her quick-fire speech. Heavy, tired muscles and stinging eyes were doing their level best to drag him back under into the land of Nod. "I'm going to take that grunt as a yes. I knew you were already alive because of the snoring." What the fuck? He didn't snore. Did he? He opened his mouth to speak, but his brain remained on the struggle bus, and even if he had something pithy to retort, she wasn't stopping to let him. That shelf-shaking, thunderous, obnoxious noise coming out of someone so peaceful-looking was quite the juxtaposition. Was this chick a theater major or what? Talk about being dramatic. I'm all for grown-up naps and all that, but some of us have work to do. Call me old-fashioned, but I came to the library for, quiet. She turned to leave before pausing and pointing at the desk. You might want to clean that puddle up, too. He brushed a hand across his chin, despite knowing he didn't drool. What the hell was this woman's problem with him? She sat 2 desks away, facing him, pulling a green...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?